Welcome to the continuation of our read aloud of the split history of westward expansion. We will be reading Chapter 4, which is the last chapter from the settler's perspective, in other words, point of view. We will continue to use our reading strategies such as text structure and identifying main ideas to help us summarize our reading, along with figuring out the big idea that the author is trying to tell us. Chapter 4, From Sea to Shining Sea. In 1890, the superintendent of the U.S. Census Bureau, Robert Porter, announced that there was no longer an identifiable frontier line. The West had been settled. Cities, towns, and villages could be found across the country. Each region was slightly different, but all of them added up to make a rich tapestry that was the United States of America. The settlers who moved west were part of an amazing journey. They had left the settled East and started new lives in a new place. People who had never owned anything now owned the land they lived on. Most of the land in the western interior of the United States is considered semi-arid. It receives an average of less than 20 inches of rain each year. In order to grow crops, irrigation is often needed. Farmers had to dig deep wells and build windmills to pump water to the crops. Not everyone who settled the West made smart choices about the land. There was so much land available that people sometimes acted as if there was a never-ending supply of trees, fresh water, and fertile soil. Some settlers were wasteful when it came to protecting their new land. Some cut down too many trees or ruined the soil by overplanting. Still, others were careless when they mined such metals as gold, copper, and silver, wasting minerals in the process and polluting the surrounding land and streams for generations to come. As I paused to think about my reading, I noticed the beginning of a cause and effect structure. The landscape of the U.S. had changed. It was now much bigger than before. Because the settlers took part in an amazing journey west and created these towns and cities that now took up all the space from sea to shining sea. Those settlers, though, didn't take care of the land and were wasteful, which ruined parts of the frontier for generations to come. So when we look at it this way, the settlers, wanting to enhance their lives, moved west in order to own land and create prosperous towns. And by doing this, they caused a change in the wildlife and the land of the United States by overplanting, cutting down too many trees, mining metals out of the mountains, and wasting those minerals in processes and polluting the surrounding land and streams for generations to come. If I continue to think about my reading, this paragraph right here, although it's part of the cause and effect text structure, I also think this is an opinion. Because if you look at it from a settler's perspective, finding gold, owning their own land, creating prosperous cities, towns, and farms might have been a good thing for them. They weren't taking into consideration how they were destroying the land. So this could be from a settler's point of view, but I don't think so. I think the author is trying to tell you, although moving west really bettered some citizens' lives, it also took a toll on the country as a whole. The Gold Rush. Not everyone went west to build farms and towns. On January 24, 1848, James Marshall discovered gold near Sutter's Mill, California. That discovery led to gold fever. People from all over the country rushed to California to pan for gold. By the end of the year, 8,000 men searching for gold had moved to California, which became a state in 1850. By 1851, that number reached 100,000. The gold rush lasted only a few years, peaking in 1853, but it forever changed the West. California's population continued to grow, reaching 380,000 in 1860. Most settlers did everything they could to make their new homeland a good place to live. They worked to build productive farms and ranches that were able to support their families. The long, difficult trip west made them grateful for their new lives, and they wanted to make the most of it. I'm going to pause here and think about my reading. And I just read 2 paragraphs telling me information on how great it was that the West was becoming more prosperous. Settlers moving west to find gold, which was a precious mineral, and they could become prosperous landowners and business owners. They worked hard to make productive farms and ranches that were able to support their families. So in essence, they really did enhance their lives. However, this is from their point of view. And if I think back to other chapters about the fights they had with Native Americans, about laws that were created to take Native Americans off their land, I really have a hard time thinking that the Native Americans really wanted the settlers to come and move on their land. So even though the settlers make it look good now, that everything is great, and even though they faced hardships, they have now become prosperous, I can't help but wonder, what if I looked at it from the Native Americans' point of view? How would it be different? The United States had become a nation that stretched from one ocean to another. Instead of many regions sharing a continent, the United States became one united land. Settling the frontier gave Americans a sense of pride. For the people who made it to the new land in the West, their dream had come true. I'm going to continue to think about what I just thought of when I paused just recently. And I'm going to also look at this last line. For the people who made it to the new land in the West, their dream had come true. But at what cost? From what I'm understanding, the settlers moved west to enhance their lives and make it better. And although they faced many challenges, they still became prosperous. But in their effort to become prosperous, they took many people who were actually living on the land and made them move out of the way. So if I think about it from a text structure point of view, I can look at it as cause and effect. That the settlers wanted to make their lives better and more prosperous. And because of that, the Native Americans were beginning to enter their nightmare, as opposed to the settlers who were entering their dreamlands. If I wanted to summarize these first few chapters, I would think of my main idea as a box, in a boxes and bullets format. And I would say that the European settlers came to the New World and traveled west in order to enhance their lives. And yes, they faced many challenges along the way. But they eventually changed the landscape of the United States, both in good and bad ways. I can use details from the text to support those 3 main ideas. And I can use text structure to help me identify those details to help support those main ideas. We'll be moving next into the Native American perspective, and we're going to then compare and contrast different events that we've already read about from a settler's point of view, now looking at it from the Native Americans' point of view. I wonder, how different will it really be?